right, it's all good. It's getting me in trouble. But anyways, let's kind of start out with the chart analysis. Kind of as Jamar talked about last week, we're kind of coming into a possible bullish cycle for cryptos, and then also, of course, for the traditional markets. So what I'm seeing personally, just looking at Ethereum, if we kind of zoom out here, you can clearly see that we're kind of going east to west, and we're sitting in this channel that I'm actually going to mark off here. All right. So the top of our channel is about 1379 with the bottom about 1268. So I'm not expecting any major movement until we break either to the upside or to the downside of this channel. But we do have the bullish bias coming up on the Mastermind report. So I'm going to have my favor in that direction. And to kind of add to that, and for me personally, the way I trade, as you know, I'm a big proponent of the TDI. As you can see here, just for ETH, for example, on the 1 hour chart, we recently just bounced off that 30 level on the 1 hour chart. So I tell you guys about that every week. It's a very great level to have your alert set. You know, even when we recently just kind of came to that 30 level here, you see we had a nice bounce. So, and, you know, even vice versa, going the opposite way, we know the 70 level is where we typically have those bounces back to the downside. So literally just having, guys, you know, some alerts at those areas, you've had ample trading opportunities even within this consolidation range. But one thing I do like to see, and kind of how I've been trading this consolidation range as well, if we get a retest of the bottom of the channel, I'm actually looking for those first green FVGs to take those buys. Okay, so a lot of people try to use the FVG and they try to incorporate it into their charts, but there's also a timing element to that as well. You know, you don't just want to pull up a chart and take an FVG every time you see one. Preferably, you want to see it when it's at the bottom or the top of a consolidation zone, or even more preferably, you want to see price actually break a recent low, and then you want to see a retest of an FVG going the opposite direction. So a perfect example, which you don't have the FVG right here, right now, because it actually got cleared. I can actually probably go to the bar replay. I'm just going to try to show a live example real quick. So let's just go back on ETH real quick. Let's go to the bar replay. And I want to show you guys what I mean. All right, so you see here, this was the most recent low on ETH before we kind of started this consolidation channel. So if I let this bar replay actually play out, give it just a second. Boom. All right, so right here is a breach of that recent low. So this is the prime area you actually want to start looking for those FVG setups. This can be used on the smaller time frames and also the higher time frames. The higher the time frame, the longer you should anticipate the trade playing out. So an hour plus is normally what I would do for more of the swings, and then a 15-minute all the way down to the 2-minute is what I would use preferably for the day trading aspect. But this is actually I wanted to show you guys. So we have this breach of the low here. Okay, we're going to let this play out real quick. All right, so you see now, after you've breached a recent low, especially on these higher time frames, I'm looking for the green FVGs to start forming. That way I can start to look for my buy positions. So I'm just going to let this play out real quick. All right. So you'll see here, you had a couple of green FVGs show up here. They aren't the biggest FVGs. You know, obviously, the bigger the FVG, the more probable. But simply the fact that we had an aggressive candle breaking a recent low, normally that first green FVG to the opposite direction is super, super high probable. And the reason why I like to take them when breaking a recent low is because typically they're going to form very close to where that low actually pushed away from. So as you can see here, we pushed away, had a big wick here. So if you were taking entries at these first FVG areas here, I would just place your stop either below the wick, which I typically don't use the wick. I like to more so use the bodies of the candles. So my stop loss actually would have been at this recent low right here after breaching this previous low here. So anybody can hop in, ask questions if you have, but essentially your entry would have been in this area here, because this is where you first started to see the FVGs going the opposite direction, and your stop would have been here. So if you let that actually play out, you can see you had a very nice trade going to the upside. And I'm actually going to go back just a second, just to kind of show you guys one more thing, because I just saw something very important to kind of give you guys a target of where you want to take profits on these types of trades. So if we go back really quickly, back to where we just broke that low one more time. I'm going to pause and show you guys too where you should be looking to take those profits as well. Okay, I'm going to let that play out. So we got the break of the low. We got the green FVGs forming. All right, we got the retest of the FVGs. So you should be in the trade now with a stop right here. Okay, and I'm actually going to change our stop loss to yellow so you can see a difference there. So a lot of people ask me, when you're taking these setups, what are your targets? So the first obvious targets for me are these big FVG gaps that are typically caused by those volatile candles that break that low. So as you can see here, when we actually broke the low here on ETH at about 1292, that big red candle caused a liquidity void, which caused this big red FVG box that you see right here. So typically that's my target. I like to take it at about 50% of the box at anywhere to the top of the box. So when I typically trade, if I have a setup like this, especially on a higher time frame, I'll normally try to take part of my profit in the middle half of the box, so about 50% between the total size of this red FVG, and then my second partial profit will be taken at the top of the FVG box. A lot of times it will run past that and possibly test the highs, but if you want a high probable area to where it may retrace before continuing up, always look to take profits in the middle of the FVGs right above where you're entering. So if you're entering here in the green FVGs, your first target should be this obvious big FVG box here, or even possible this second FVG box right above it, okay? So if we let this play out really quick, I'm gonna slow it down just a second. Let's see what happens. Okay, price went up into that first obvious FVG. It retested as well, that top one, broke through the big one, and then boom, what happens? As soon as it gets to that second one right above it, that's where you get that first pullback before it continued to, go back up. So that's why I say it's very important to use those FVGs as a profit target. So that way you can go ahead and take that profit. And then if you want to get into the trade as it retests the green FVG areas for that second go round, you're not wasting a trade. Because a lot of people, they may have a predetermined target and it may be based on, not as experienced technical analysis, or it may just be based on hope, honestly. And a lot of people are shooting for the home run and they may have had their TP up here. So they're in massive profits going from here to here, especially if you're on a leveraged trade. And then they let it go all the way back to zero. And then it eventually pushes back up. But if we're thinking about trading and how it actually affects us psychologically, most people, if they're taking an entry down here and then they're in great profits, especially on a leveraged trade, and then to watch it come all the way back to break even, a lot of people will take that scratch right there and take a break even or even lose money, and then they actually miss out on the rest of the move. Versus if you had your targets at that first FVG that was here before it got closed, and this one here, you would have secured your profit, it would have pulled back, and then you would have had a second opportunity to actually add to your profit. And as you can see here, once it had that second retest, we actually pushed back again to those same areas, okay? Actually broke that area as well. As you can see here, kept pushing up. So very, very important, guys, to have some profit targets at those FVG areas. All right, so I'm gonna take a quick pause there. Does anybody have any quick questions on this particular setup that I just went over? Because it's very powerful, especially when you have a situation like this where there's clear divergence as well. And what I mean by that is, as I spoke about earlier, when price or the TDI breaches the 30, that's kind of your heads up to kind of look for entries back to the upside. Now, if you're just playing the TDI breaching the 30 and crossing back above the red line and the bands, you still could have made money on this quick move up. It would have been short-lived, but there definitely was room to make profit. But when you see price actually breaking that recent low and the TDI is actually closing higher than the previous level here. So TDI here was at 30, price was at 1287. Price went lower than 1287, but the TDI is actually at 32. So that's another dead giveaway that there's going to be a high probable entry here at the first green FVG. And if you've been on a lot of my other trainings, you know we typically look for those shark fins as well. So if you can see here on the TDI, you'll see the green line breaches that Bollinger Band and kind of creates a shark fin. So if you've been on the calls, that's a very, 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 very high probable setup. Add that FVG and you're freaking golden. Point blank simple. So I just wanted to go over that setup real quick with you guys. It's because it was a setup I took, and a lot of people were asking me about the FVG. I'm starting to see a lot of chats going on about the FVG. So I kind of just wanted to give you guys an actual setup so that you're not looking at every single FVG appears. You want to more so focus on those key areas.